1940's The Great Dictator is a movie that came out at the only time it could have. Charlie Chaplin was at the height of his career and still unaware of the full horrors of the Nazi concentration camps. He said later in his autobiography that he wouldn't have been making a comedy making fun of Hitler had he known what was really going on there. But the fact the movie came out at the only time it could have does not mean it was an easy time to make it, not at all. The United States wouldn't have joined World War II for another year after the release, and Hollywood did not want to anger Germany, some from cowardice, fearing the highly lucrative German film industry will cease to show American films, and some since they were Nazis themselves, like Walt Disney for example, who frequented American Nazi meetings. When the US joined the war, these attitudes changed, but not as fully as you might expect. While Germany became an official state enemy, the government remained suspicious and even outright hostile towards premature anti-fascists, as they called them. Because what reason might one have to be against the literal Holocaust while the government was turning a blind eye to it? Well, that sounds awfully like having a consistent moral compass, and that is basically being a communist. Anyway, I'm not here to cry about Charlie Chaplin being blacklisted in Hollywood. Fuck that guy. He was a rabid misogynist, and I'm not gonna go into the way he treated his literal teenage wives, but I encourage you to look it up if it's not gonna ruin your day. That guy deserves no sympathy, and he's not gonna get it from me. But this film, The Great Dictator, is not just a great film, an important film. It's a weird film. Because while nearly everyone agrees it's near flawless, most people will agree it has one flaw. And now with time, that flaw is being seen more and more as its best, most iconic moment, the ending monologue. Basically, the whole film is built around one observational humor joke. That Chaplin guy kinda looks like Hitler, doesn't he? Chaplin plays the Jewish barber and the Great Dictator, and they get confused for one another, and finally switch places. It's time for the Führer to give a speech, but unbeknownst to his followers and the many millions listening live on the radio, he has been swapped for a friendly neighborhood Jewish barber, who in truly un-Chaplinian fashion, this was the first true talkie Chaplin has made, gives a speech.
I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. This world has room for everyone, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us all unite!
It's legitimately beautiful, I think, and a lot of people I know, film buffs and labor organizers alike, agree. But it's kind of a crazy thing to do, right? Turning to the audience at the end of a laugh-a-minute slapstick comedy movie and giving them 4 minutes of a socialist humanist manifesto. If show not tell is the most basic film rule, then what are we to make of this? I think it's easy for us to understand, with historical hindsight, why Chaplin felt he had to end his film this way. Of course fighting fascism is more important than making an entertaining or even good movie. Art exists to serve humanity, not vice versa. It's harder to see things this way, I think, without that hindsight. When consuming the art of our own times, art that is sacrificing its own perfection for a goal not as universally accepted as good as fighting literal Nazi Germany. This is a video about My Chemical Romance's Danger Days. Part 1. It's obviously not an easy fit to follow up The Black Parade, one of the most celebrated and ambitious rock albums of the 2000s, and the consensus was, at the time, MCR's next album, and to this day final album, though hopefully that changes soon, failed at this tall task. The fandom didn't like it. Calling MCR an emo band is a bit controversial, but to say their audience is emo is absolutely not. The vast majority of people were drawn to their music for its edge and griminess and darkness. It was vampires, widows who poisoned their husbands for the mansion, a cancer patient remembering their time in the army on their deathbed. Danger Days was not that. It was colorful and lively, it was sci-fi and postmodern, it was accessible and comic booky. The lyrics were not as poetic and gothic, it was fun, and therefore seen as the band selling out or betraying what they stood for. Because of that, when I got into My Chemical Romance, I steered clear of Danger Days, only getting around to it with very low expectations when I completely overplayed both The Black Parade and Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge. When I did, I didn't like it. I thought it was shallow, and it just didn't scratch the same itch for me. The person who introduced me to MCR said they loved it, but it was stupid and not as good as the other albums, and I was inclined to believe them, and to stick to the albums I like. But after a few listening attempts, in which I failed to make it all the way through, I noticed a line in the first song, which was by far my favorite out of what I heard, that baffled me to the point of laughing out loud. Everybody wants to change the world, but no one wants to die. If you know a single MCR fan, or you are one, you understand why this is literally the funniest shit ever. No one wants to die, my ass. MCR would have 5 fans in the entire world if nobody wanted to die. They would have no members. You cannot be the most successful emo adjacent band of all time and tell me that no one wants to die. There was a literal satanic panic about MCR making your kids depressed in Britain in the mid-2000s, and the band is well aware of the audience they have and the music they make. Of course they are.
We've always told you that if things feel so desperate, and you're so hurt, you're so depressed, you find some person that you trust to talk to. Because even though we're all outcasts in our own way, we all do belong in this world, and we all fit in this world. Do you understand me? Having said that, let's fucking party!
In the recent reunion tour, they held a fan-made flag with the names of people who died who would have been there at the shows. This absolute textbook definition of grim-dark irony is uttered not only with complete fervor and seriousness, but is basically how the first song of, and the biggest single from, Danger Days ends. Is Danger Days this bad? MCR this careless that they just let it slip? No, of course not. At least that's how I felt. They are my favorite band after all. Three Cheers is literally my favorite album of all time. So if this understanding of the line does not make sense, it means we have to make it make sense. We have to try and read it differently. Let's take the careless and cruel, you say and think you want to change the world, but you're not willing to die for it, and flip it into the compassionate and kind, you say and think you want to die, but you really just want to change the world. That's a fucking radical exclamation, and a needed one, for exactly who will be hearing it. With this line unlocked, the entirety of Danger Days opens before us, as a meditation on the socio-political causes for depression and mental illness, as a meta-meditation on MCR's previous albums, the messages they sent, the fandom they accumulated, and their incredible beauty and faults. So let's go there. Look through MCR's previous albums, try to understand why this line is so fascinating when contrasted with their themes. And also, see how this fourth wall breaking plea to their audience is not a new thing to MCR. Not at all, but a thread weaving all throughout and all the way back to their very first song ever, Skylines and Turnstiles. Chapter 2. It's a cliche to start a story on 9/11, but starting the story of MCR any other day would be a disservice. Gerard Way was working as an intern at Cartoon Network, trying to pitch an animated show in 2001.
The Breakfast Monkey Inn, cruising for crazy. Did I hear breakfast? Oh, it's you!
He was a couple blocks away when the Twin Towers fell. Gerard felt they needed to do something that mattered, that can connect to people, help people, in his own small way. So he went and wrote Skylines and Turnstiles, and a couple weeks later, there was a band. Their first album, 2002's I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love, Imbum Bilbum, Imbum Bimbum for short, I can pronounce that, is an extremely grim experience, opened with a screamo song about drug addiction discussed through the metaphor of an abusive relationship, and filled with songs about murder-suicide weddings, shootouts, having to kill your loved ones after they get turned into a zombie, and of course, the scariest thing of all, capitalism. Skylines is a bit different though, even if it flies under the radar if you don't examine the lyrics closely. Skylines is hopeful. It might sound silly to call a song like Skylines, a song about 9/11, hopeful or optimistic, but I think that just because we have a fucked up understanding of optimism, one that's too intertwined with naivete. I work at a summer camp, and one of the most important things that we tell our new staff is to never make false promises. If a kid tells you about their home situation sucking, or that they are scared about climate change, or that they're sad about a war going on somewhere, you can't say, oh, it will all work itself out, the war will end soon, we will make the technology to curb climate change, your parents will stop misgendering you soon, because you don't fucking know that. And either the kid smells your bullshit from a mile away, or worse, they believe you, and their trust is betrayed when, or if, that doesn't happen. It's hard to be hopeful and comforting without lying, but it's really the only way. So MCR didn't say, oh yeah, 9/11, it sucked, but don't worry, this will never happen again, and we will all get through our trauma in a jiffy. Because that is an unhinged thing to say, and a thing I think they're too politically literate to believe in. Instead, Skylines tries to be hopeful in a real way.
You're not in this alone. Let me break this awkward silence. Be the first to say I'm sorry. Hear me out. And if the world needs something better, let's give them one more reason. Now, tell me where we go from here. Tell me we go from here.
Connecting to people, being empathetic, strengthening community. That's how you deal with bad things, not miracle solutions. Only 2 years after 2002's I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love,
Ibimba Yabimmel. Ibimb Yabimmel. Ibimb Yabimmel.
MCR released their second album, the one that was their break into the mainstream, for their genre anyway. 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. In many ways, the album is a sharpened, more focused version of Bullets, both in literal sound quality, instrumentation and melody, and in aesthetics, lyricism and concept. Revenge is MCR finally growing into the band they are known for today. As Gerard said in the 2006 documentary, Life on the Murder Scene,
Revenge is really the band. Bullets is the band trying to find itself. By the time we hit Revenge, we had really become My Chemical Romance.
and it's kind of a concept album. Bullets had concepts in it, it had high concept songs, but it's too all over the place to be really called a concept album. Revenge's story is much more clear, while still being quite fluid and up to interpretation. According to Gerard Way,
The concept for the record 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge was a story of a man and a woman who are separated by death in a gunfight, and he goes to hell, only to realize by the devil telling him that she's still alive. The devil says, you can be with her again if you bring me the souls of 1,000 evil men. And so he hands him a gun, and he says, I'll go do it.
at least allegedly, this quote is on a bunch of websites and even Wikipedia sources it, but it originally comes from a random dead fan site, so take it with a grain of salt. Even if it's not a real quote, there's a pretty wide consensus in the community that this is what the album is about, and it's also pretty consistent with what you hear in the album itself. After 999 evil souls are delivered, the classic fairy tale twist comes. The final soul our protagonist must deliver is his own, corrupted by the murdering he did to get to this point. The album continues the trend of having a song that's a fourth wall break, an uninterrupted communing with the audience, like Skylines, and due to the conceptuality and overall cohesiveness of the album, any break stands out even more. I'm not okay, I Promise, is to this day one of MCR's most popular songs, and it's by far the most popular song from Revenge, with the only song coming close being Helena. It doesn't fit the vibe and aesthetic of much of the album very well, it doesn't tie into the story at all. The lyrical style is direct to the point of absurdism, and it's fucking amazing. The band needed to scream that they are and their audience needed to scream that too. And so they made a song to facilitate that, and it resonated. This needed song trend continues even stronger in their next, and to this day most popular and critically acclaimed album, The Black Parade. This one is a full-blown rock opera, and the story is pretty clear this time. Our protagonist is a cancer patient on their deathbed, reminiscing about their life and failures in relationships and missed opportunities. And then there's teenagers.
They said I'm teenagers scared the living shit out of me. They could care less as long as someone will bleed.
An anthem about society's irrational fear of teenagers. It feels like a direct response to the emo satanic panic MCR was the poster child for at the time. It's jarring, in energy, genre and subject matter, but it needed to exist, so MCR made it. In The Black Parade, we see not only a sharpening of this earlier tendency, but a new thing altogether. A happy, for MCR at least, ending. Famous Last Words, the final track of the album, takes a complete left turn from basically anything up to that point on The Black Parade. Sleep is about having done too much bad to be redeemed and accepting that fate.
For the good guys and the bad guys, for the monsters that I bet, how could you cry for me? 'Cause I don't feel bad about it. So shut your eyes, kiss me goodbye.
Mama finds sick joy in nihilism and the exclamation that we all go to hell.
Mama, we all go to hell. Mama, we all go to hell. I'm writing this letter and wishing you well. Mama, we all go to hell.
Disenchanted is about being, well, disenchanted with the prospect of life having any meaning.
I spent my high school career spit on his shop to agree, so I can watch out my heroes sell a car on TV. It's just a sad song with nothing to say about a lifelong wait for a hospital stay.
And then, Famous Last Word says, fuck all that, keep going, stay alive, despite everything. It's about forgiving oneself.
Well, is it hard understanding why men complete? I am not afraid to keep on living. I am not afraid to walk this world alone. But if you stay, you'll be forgiven. Nothing you can say can stop me going.
At the live show I went to, this was one of the few songs everyone in the crowd knew the words to. And seeing a whole stadium screaming that off the top of their lungs, you don't need to know what people went through individually to connect to that. In Three Cheers, the ending song was maybe the darkest, most desperate of the entire album. I think it's beautiful that MCR took such a heel turn at the end of their next album, decided to end it on a better note. Because the ending note matters. Endings matter. Depressing music is great. It can literally be a lifesaver. It has been for so many, including me, but you can't stay in nihilism for too long. It becomes toxic. You have to keep going despite. Where can this philosophy go next? From a song, to a song that breaks the concept of an album, to a song that breaks the story, and then a radical shift at the end? where can it even go next? Danger Days has no songs that break its flow to talk to the fans directly. It doesn't have any songs that exist simply because they must for the sake of the people hearing them, despite not being right for the album. Danger Days is that transgressive act, not in song form, but in album form, and therefore not breaking from its album, but from MCR's discography. It's MCR's magnum opus. Part 3.
Look alive, sunshine.
I think I've established pretty well at this point how core Death is to MCR's discography. But an interesting pattern in every album before Danger Days is the position of Death in the narrative. The ending or beginning of an album, and even both, in 3 Cheers, is marked with the death of either the main character or their beloved. Death is the end or beginning of a story. It does not exist along a continuity. That makes sense for albums about grief and trauma, and it makes for satisfying storytelling. So I think it's very notable that Danger Days deviates from this. During Sing's music video, the 3rd song in the album, our main characters, the Fabulous Four, who are played by the members of the band, all die on a rescue mission to save the girl, a young child with a secret power destined to destroy Battery City and Better Living Industries, the evil company. Why am I repeating myself? The company that controls the setting of the story with dystopian authoritarian measures. The album only acknowledges 2 of them dying? Cobra Kid and Jetstar?
It looks like Jetstar and the Cobra Kid had a clap with an exterminator that went all Costa Rica and got themselves ghosted, dusted out on Route Guano.
But in the music video, they very clearly all die together, so I'ma go with that. Even if only 2 of them die, my point works, maybe even more so I think it's fine. So, they sacrifice their life for a noble goal. That's already a big thematic shift from the cruel, random, unnecessary death that populates the previous albums. But what's so much more interesting is the fact that this album is able to kill off its 4 or 2 main characters and just keep going. It can do that because at the end of the day, Danger Days is not a story about anyone individually. It's about a movement, a community, working together towards a common goal, bigger than any of them individually. If you take the 2 people route, it's even more powerful, because then the other 2 killjoys just keep going after the 2 best friends and allies die. This is the core of what differentiates Danger Days from anything else MCR ever made. All the love and happiness and relationships in their other albums are in past tense, lost, corrupted, abandoned. The pronouns are always I or you. Danger Days introduces a we. This looking back and reflecting on your trauma alone by yourself is natural. That's kinda what trauma is, a force leaving you in the past, unable to imagine the future. The first step to healing is to realize something is wrong, accept you're being able to say things like admit you're
So sick and tired of all the needless beating.
wonder
Does anyone notice? But does anyone care?
it's a very important step. But you can't stay there forever. You have to keep going. You have to believe in the future. And Danger Days is kind of as close as you can get to an instruction manual on how to do that, even beyond what the concept and the group aspects of it mean on their own. So let's follow this manual. You need to believe you deserve love, and be willing to ask for it. You've gotta see what tomorrow brings.
You've got to see what tomorrow brings.
And more than that, be what tomorrow needs.
You've got to be what tomorrow needs.
You need to find something to care about and fight for it. May I recommend stopping the climate apocalypse? You have to take ownership of your life, no matter what you've been through, and believe it can be better. There are so many more examples of this instructional fourth wall breaking in the album, but I'll stop here because we need to keep going. This could feel like a self-help book, like someone telling you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps or to look on the bright side, but it doesn't. It doesn't because, just like with the very first song, It's not naive or dismissive. It's not telling you you're overreacting or that everything will be perfect or that it's gonna be easy. Just that you have to move on and that you will. And it comes from a real place, an empathetic place, and therefore the message hits. Because you know the people telling you this message understand you and are not talking from a place of ignorance. Because they wrote 3 fucking albums about all the bad shit they went through, and chances are, if you're a fan of them, there's some similarities between their struggles and yours. I want to give one more example that I think exemplifies this really well. The song Summertime. It's a love song. MCR has never made a love song before. Sure, they made songs that talked about relationships, about sexuality and romance, but I never made a love song. It's always been a super fucked up toxic relationship like To the End, a love falling apart like in I Don't Love You, or if it was a positive relationship, it was one in which one of the people is gone now, like in Early Sunsets, Cemetery Drive, How I Disappear, or literally half of their fucking discography. They even made a song about gay prison sex, and a song about trading blowjobs for cocaine. And those songs both slap, but they are very far from being love songs. So a song like Summertime, sweet and intimate, in the here and now, not past nor future, is fucking radical for them to make. The fact it's a normal song is as far from normal as it can get. And it's not really a normal song either. It has sadness and alienation imbued within it. It had to be true. It's about loving and being loved despite hardship, despite the past and present. Not love erasing and fixing everything that came before it, not love completing you. And this song is not a finale of the album. There's 3 songs and an interlude after it. And it would have been so easy to make it a finale. It's maybe MCR's most accessible song ever. It's one of the most popular from Danger Days. But putting it inside the album is one point. Beautiful, but not defining. I don't know. That means a lot to me. Obviously. I could talk for just as long about every single song on the album. About Destroyer being a radical queer anthem. About Sing being about young people growing up through the dystopia of climate change. About The Kids from Yesterday being a torch-passing moment from the band towards a new generation. But that's all my thoughts and my interpretations, tinted by my biases and the things I care about. And I think while interpretation can liberate meaning out of a text, it can also limit it, confine it. Listen to the album yourself. Really listen to it. And see what you find there. There's a lot to find. Which brings me back to the line that started this video. Part 4 and final. The world kinda sucks right now. Our politicians are actively supporting or participating in an ongoing genocide. Fascism is on the rise globally. Income inequality in the US is literally worse than it was in the lead up to the French Revolution. Anti-queer rhetoric is taking a hold of policy and voters alike globally. And climate change is a big, scary thing. Well, none of these things really are that new, I guess. The world has always sucked in various ways. It's more correct to say people are more aware of it now. Especially younger people. Nowhere has this been more apparent to me than with the genocide in Gaza and the growing gap between those who still get their information primarily from mainstream and legacy news institutions and those who get their info from other places. To be clear, the other places are the good ones, even despite all of social media's flaws. And of course, this changing world and changing access to its issues and tragedies and the criminal negligence of those in power has led to rising depression and anxiety among young people. It's rational to be anxious and depressed about what's going on. It's normal. And we shouldn't ignore these feelings. We just have to walk past them, together. We have to hold our communities tight and fight for what we care about, alongside other people who understand us. We need to hold the "I'm not okay, I promise" part of who we are without letting it destroy our summertime. Maybe we can both want to die sometimes and still work to change the world. Danger Days didn't teach me that. The world did. But this gay little album makes me have a little more faith that it's possible. What more can you really ask for? Okay, so I know I said I wouldn't, but I really fucking gotta talk about Destroyer. Like, yeah, obviously it has a top surgery reference, which is fucking awesome, and the moaning makes me, like, feel things. But legitimately, the concept of they don't believe in us, but I believe we're the enemy is so fucking strong, and so core to what keeps me going as a queer person. Like, yeah, we're all fucking idiots not knowing what we're doing, but the worst people on Earth want us dead. And that's gotta mean something. It's gotta mean we're on the right path. The first and biggest Nazi book burning was of research into trans people. We gotta be doing something, right? Kinda funny this video about MCR starts and ends with Nazi Germany. That wasn't planned. Anyway, bye for real now. Love you!